Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. What a great zchus it is that throughout the entire world, we are all united in the study of Pirkei Avos. I just received a call after last week's Pirkei Avos that an individual in Switzerland told me that he tunes in every single Motzei Shabbos. He says, you have no idea the feeling. When I learn together with everybody in the entire world, it's much different for him. And Torah Anytime has done exactly that. It's taken Torah to a new level. It's united Yidden from all over the world in the study of Torah. May they be matzliach in everything that they do. May chayil el choyil mitocha chava. Also, a very special thank you to Chazak, an organization that is very close to my heart. What Chazak has done in communities throughout the entire world to bring Torah, especially their work on behalf of the children, to take boys and girls and to remove them from public schools and to put them into yeshivas and Beis Yaakovs. It's Berumo Shaloilam. May they continue their work. May Chayil El Choyil. Our shir today is on Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel, the 4th Mishnah. Our Mishnah begins. Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon says, Shloisha she'achlu al shulchan echad. 3 people that sit together and eat at one table, and they don't say divrei Torah. They don't exchange any Torah thoughts. Ki'ilu achlu mezivchei mesim, is as if they're eating from the limbs of dead people. What a strong lashon that we find in Pirkei Avos. Why? Firstly, we learn that an individual has to know it is extremely important that whatever we do, there is always Torah that is learned. No matter if it is playing basketball, if it's enjoying, if it's different things that we do on vacation, if we're going swimming, everything should be immersed at different times in Divrei Torah. Certainly when we eat and drink, it's an avodas Hashem. It's a time that we are lifting up the food, the Dvarim Gashmiim, closer and closer to Hashem. The sheer materialism gets its aliyah by us being involved in Divrei Torah. So therefore, 3 people that eat together, and it's interesting why 3 people? Because I saw from the Mefarshim, it's not shaykh that you'll have 3 amaratzim. At least one person has to know a little bit Torah. One person has to know a little bit halacha. That is the importance of when we sit down to eat, that somebody should say at least a vort. Someone should say a simple halacha, maybe something in Shmiras Halashon, but something should be said, particularly at the Shabbos table, either to learn a halacha of Shmiras Halashon, a halacha about being kind to each other, or perhaps a halacha about Shabbos itself, to give the children especially a chance to speak. Let them say over what they know. Let them say over a story. Let them say over a thought. It is extremely important that they feel that they have a voice at the Shabbos table. Of course, the adults have their drushas. The adults are prepared with what they want to say. But more important is that the children should find their expression in ruchnius at the Shabbos table. And so we learn that if 3 people did sit together and they don't say divrei Torah, it's like they're eating from zivchei mesim, from dead limbs. The Baal Shem Tov, the great tzaddik, said the following. Why is it? Because he says sometimes there could be food on our table. And the reason that that food came on our table is so we're able to raise up the holy sparks within the food. How do we do that? By saying divrei Torah, by saying a vort on the parsha, by saying a halacha, by saying an interesting thought in Musar, by talking about controlling our anger. Then the food has an aliyah. However, what happens if that food came on the table and it was waiting for us to give it the life, the spark, the essence, and we didn't do it? So then it's like zivchei mesim. Then it remained just like regular table. A fascinating incident happened. I was sitting together. It was the time of burning the mortgage for an institution. And the president of the bank came to help the celebration of this Moisad. The president of the bank turned to me and said, Rabbi, Are you going to say a few words? Are you going to quote the Bible before we eat? I said, I certainly am going to say a few words, but our custom is generally that we wait until after we break the bread, we say the blessing, and then we say a Devar Torah. So important it is that even the bank president realized, if you have a meal, you say over words of inspiration. This is something unreal. In the old days, it's brought down in the Achronim that they used to say at every Suda, at every famous feast, they would say over Divrei Torah. No matter where, people would always say over Divrei Torah. You come to a chasana, of course, you need to have at least a 32-piece band. You need an orchestra. You need the violins playing as the Chas and Kala come down the way. Of course, the flowers. It's important that there should be flowers. Very, very important. All of the things are so important. But you know what's equally important? Ad-Devar Torah. I went to Zurich. I was invited. They brought me in for the wedding. So I sat down at the wedding. I'm there. They do it in two parts. In the afternoon is the chuppah. And in the evening, they have the Suda, they have the feast, the meal. So I'm sitting at the meal. All of a sudden, one of the members of the band comes over to me, and he says to me, Rabbi, it's time now that you should make a drasha. A drasha? A speech? We don't make speeches. I said to him, no, I don't want to be matriach the olam. I don't want to, chas v'sholem, trouble the olam, they should listen. He said, no, Rabbi, I'm telling you, it's a time for a speech. I thought perhaps maybe that band member likes a speech or wants a drush or maybe knows me, so I understood it, but I didn't go. All of a sudden, the Rosh Yeshiva comes over to me, taps me on the shoulder and says, they ask you to say a drasha. Is there any reason that you didn't want to? I said, I'm not used to having speeches during the wedding. I didn't think they want. He said, here the minhag is to listen during the feast to a Devar Torah. It is our hana, just like the band, just like the flowers, just like the good food. We also want to hear Divrei Elokim Chaim. And so I did. And when I went up and I was about finished after 15 minutes, some of the oilam began to say, could you go a little bit more? Could you go a little bit more? I was fascinated. I had a great inspiration from it. But that is the idea, shaloisha she'achlu, 3 that eat al shulchan echad, and they're on one table. V'lo amru alav divrei Torah, and they don't say divrei Torah, kilu achlu misivchei mesim. How we have to understand that Torah is part and parcel of everything that we do. Other Mefarshim say, you have to also understand that the Torah Kedosha comes with us wherever we go. Whatever meal we have, the Torah governs that meal. No matter what we do, no matter what we are involved in, there are guidelines in Torah, and those guidelines are important. Let me give you a few. You go and you sit in the restaurant, right? Nice restaurant, and it comes to benching. Usually if you go to somebody's house, so there's a special bracha for the oirach, the guest, makes in honor of the householder, makes in honor of the balabayas. How about if you go to a restaurant? Do you say it or not? Hagoin Reb Elyashiv said, yes you do. Because the owner of the restaurant, the people there, they try to serve you, they try to make you happy. They go to extra efforts in order to make sure that you enjoy the meal. Say the harachamon. That's what it means that the table is governed by halacha. Another very fascinating question. An individual is not supposed to be eating on the fly. A person that eats in the street, domer lekelev. They're considered to be like a dog. Not only that, we can't accept their edus just because they're eating down the street. How many times you see somebody sitting there on the road and they're eating a pizza as they're walking down. They're having a hamburger, having a whole meal. Ha! Not b'nei Torah, not b'nei Torah. We go and we sit down and we eat a proper meal. We say the bracha achrona and then we leave. So we see that the Torah governs every single thing that we do, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing. we got to make sure we know the halacha. The halacha kedima. What bracha do I make first? What food do I eat first? What is considered to be more chaviv? All of those things are important. And in fact, what happens if the doctor, and I've been asked this many times, the doctor says, this food is not for you. You shouldn't eat it. So what happens if the person says, I can't, he just assered my favorite food. I love that food. I got to have that food. What happens if the person eats the food that the doctor says he shouldn't? Should he make a bracha on it or not? Hagoyin Rabbi Yoshev said, the bracha rishona, the first bracha before he eats, he does make. However, the bracha achrona, he should not make. What's the reason? The bracha achrona is going to thank Hashem. He wasn't allowed to eat what he just ate, so how could he make the bracha? Adrabah, he's going against the Nisr D'Rabbanan that he shouldn't have had the food. But the first bracha, Rabbi Yosha says maybe the one little crumb that he'll eat in the beginning, that one little crumb will not be harmful for him. Maybe he's allowed to have a little bit. Over that little bit, it already requires a bracha. With that, I have to understand, I got to make sure that everything on the table that requires a bracha, that I make the bracha. If they bring fruit over in the middle of the Suda, what do I do? Do I have to make a bracha or not? These are all the halachos that are important for us to know while we're eating. Ein mesichin b'suda. It also says that a person shouldn't be talking in the middle of the Suda. There are many reasons why. But of course, for the digestion, a person has to be very careful that the food should go in the proper way, like we learned the night of Pesach. And besides that, an individual has to be careful. They shouldn't get upset or angry while they're eating. It should be a time of calm. It should be restful. A person should be able to concentrate on their meal. Ein mesichin b'suda. We don't interrupt our meal in that way. And the pasuk that is given, because if a person doesn't eat in the preparation, Namar, there's a pasuk in Yeshayahu Hanavi, Ki kol shulchanos malu keitzaya, that unfortunately all their table is filled with, I don't want to say it, regurgitation is spread across the entire table. Why is it? So there's a very interesting parish. If you take a look inside in Yeshayahu Hanavi, you'll see a little bit more what the pasuk means. It says, "V'gam ele beyayin shogu." Also these with wine, they made a big mistake. Uvashecher ta'u, and when they had the whiskey, they strayed. Kohen v'navi, even the kohen, even the navi, shogu v'ashecher, they got all mixed up. Nivlu min hayayin, and they corrupted their way because of the wine. Tohu min hashechar. That's what the pasuk says, and it repeats it again. And it clouded their vision. Poku plilia. Not only that, but it perverted the justice system. So we see that wine has this ability. Schnapps, a drink, has this ability. A little bit is okay. More than that is not okay. They came to the great Baba Sali, and Baba Sali used to have his special arak, special whiskey that he would keep on the table, and when a person would come, he would pour them a little bit, and he would give them a bracha. One person came in from the United States, tourist, ready to see the great rabbi, wanted to leave a nice donation. He sits down, and Baba Sali's ready to give him a bracha. He pours for him a cup of arak. The man says, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to drink. I'm not supposed to. Baba Sali said, you could drink this one. I'm telling you, you could drink it. He drank it down. He liked it. He took the bottle, he's ready to pour a second drink. Baba Sali said, wait, I took achrayas for only one, not more than that. A person has to realize that there are limitations. Interesting, Yosef HaTzadik, from the time that the brothers sold him into slavery, they didn't drink. No wine, no whiskey, no intoxicating beverage. Why? Because it helped them. It guarded over them. It protected them. It made them secure. That they never intoxicated, that they never got themselves into a state in which their vision would be blurred, their justice would be perverted. They wouldn't be able to distinguish right for wrong. A fascinating idea is that Yosef HaTzadik was prevented, as we learn in the Gemara Avodah Zarah, what wine promotes. He was prevented from a sin with Eshes Potiphar. Why? Because he didn't drink. Had he drunk, had he had the wine, had he become intoxicated, had he become shikr, history would have perhaps been different, chas v'sholom. So we learn this is a very important thing. And I've seen it many, many times. For our young people, we should be careful to show them the right example. Lining up the table with all different kinds of drinks and schnapps. Where do you see that? You want to take a bottle of fine wine to make a toiva meitiv. You want to make a bracha, yain yisamach levav enosh. Great. But it's got to be the right example. It's got to be the right example for everybody, for ourselves as well. I was invited to a huge bar mitzvah. I didn't know the Balei Simcha. The Balei Simcha called me up and said, we would ask the Rav, we would like to commission you, come to say a Devar Torah by the Suda of the Bar Mitzvah on Shabbos. Beautiful. They told me about the Bar Mitzvah Bocher. They told me about the family. I prepared my remarks. I came there. They had several choirs that came, that walked around, very interesting, during the Suda, singing Zmiros with everybody. They had everything that you could imagine at that Bar Mitzvah Suda. I stood up. They gave me a beautiful introduction. Too much. And I began to speak. All of a sudden, in one of the tables in the middle, a guy stands up and he starts to sing, Agans your Freilach, Agan. I'm in the middle of a drasha. All of a sudden I see there's a commotion at the table. They sit him down. I continue. I thought, no, maybe the guy's in a good mood. I continue with the drasha. The guy stands back up again. Mish nichnas adar, Mish nichnas adar. And I tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind, but it was Kislev. So what's he doing with Purim? Then there was a whole commotion that broke out at the table. The Baal Simcha went over, told him he should whatever. I can't tell you the commotion that happened that day. I finished the Devar Torah. My heart was heavy. I thought to myself, the fact that they had overflowing wine and liquor, did that enhance the simcha? Did that do anything? Or chas v'sholom, did that mar it? That's exactly what we're talking about. That an individual has to know. And you know what the Mefarshim say? Why is it that the table is filled with regurgitation? Because the guy that got drunk, it is one of the consequences of being drunk. Ask anybody who was drunk on Purim, they can tell you. The table was completely filled with the regurgitation. Doesn't make a very nice table setting for an individual who wants to continue their meal. I have to tell you that we've got to be very careful in this inyan, and it perhaps is worthwhile to bring it to the public, to speak about it a little bit, because it is something that starts little and then grows big. It's not something to make fun of. I was once at a mitzvah tanz, so they had a batchen. The batchen was unbelievable. I don't know who the guy was, but he was acting out different things. It was hilarious. All of a sudden, the batchen began to act out somebody who was drunk, someone who was shikr. There was a man, an older man sitting next to me. He leaned over to me and says, Rav, I only wish I could find this funny. I could see a little tear in his eye, and then sat back. Mi yodea. Halacha has to be first and foremost at the Suda. It has to be first and foremost about our eating and drinking. First and foremost about the kashrus of the food that comes into our house and the food that comes into our mouth. Oh, I'm always very nizar in my house, badatz, In my house, I only have the greatest. I should know there's only one butcher shop I buy from. Outside, not so. I will spend a second just to tell you what happened. I was in yeshiva. So, there happened to be a vort. For one reason or another, yeshiva didn't have food that night. There wasn't supper. So we were looking forward to be able to go to the vort. Maybe we'll get a nash. It was in Monsey. Had to travel the West Side Highway. For those from Switzerland, when you come to New York, call me up. I'll show you where it's all at. Or wherever you're watching from. So, we're on the way. The guys were hungry. There was a cafe, kosher cafe, near the West Side Highway, not far. We were crowded into the little car. The driver said, I'll stop for a minute. We'll just run in. We'll get something, a snack, and we'll go on the way. Okay, fine. Everybody goes in. When you come into the cafe, there is a bar. Kedasa Kedin. I mean a bar, right? So, I see one guy sitting there. A langarekel, long coat, and sitting there by the bar. So I walked over him. And I said to him, excuse me, could you tell me, whose hashgacha this cafe is under? He looks at me, looks down at me. Alle feine Jiden sitzen da. All fine Jews sit here. In die fragst wegen der Kashrus, and you're asking about the kosher? You naive yeshiva bocher, you. I walked away from that guy, and I said to myself, I will not even drink a drop of water in this place. I told my friends, I said, Rabbi Sai, I'm sorry. I can't find out whose hashgacha this is. This is the answer I got. I ain't eating here. I'm not drinking here. One said to the other, Goldwasser, you didn't have to kill it for everybody. We walked out of there. Nobody ate. My fault. Olai val savorai. I'll take it on my shoulders. We went to the vort. The vort was very modest, not much to eat there either. And the guys were giving it to me on the way home. They gave me the business. The next morning, the Garden Yeshiva carries in the daily paper. On it, Rabbi Sholem Rubin, the person that enforces the kosher laws in New York, came into that establishment at 2 o'clock in the morning. There was open tarfus, there was treif, non-kosher meat, on the tables being prepared in the kitchen. An individual has to be careful. Halacha has to guard everything. Our food, our mouths. We have to be very, very careful. It's one of the taivas. It's one of those things that a person has a great desire. Many people have told me over the years, I know you're not supposed to have that fruit unless it's really checked, but I love that fruit. A guy once told me something very difficult, Brussels sprouts. A very nice Yid once told me, I love Brussels sprouts. How do I do it? It's a nisayon for me. Yes, it's a nisayon. And that's why we have such a Mishnah that tells us how careful we have to be. Another Indian that it says, Avos shloisha she'achlu al shulchan echad. But if 3 people sit on the table, they're together, v'amru alav divrei Torah, and they do say divrei Torah. They're excited about it. They take Torah wherever they're at. And they'll say over Avor Torah, they'll say over Halacha, they'll say something interesting. They'll say something that they heard, how beautiful it is. So what is that table? That table is like it says, Ke'ilu achlu mishulchano shel mokoim. It's like they're going to eat from the table of Borei Olam. Can you imagine Hashem sets a table and you're able to sit and eat from it? Shulchanu shaladim is mechaper. Now that we don't have the mizbeach, what is mechaper? Make your Shabbos tish. Make it enjoyable. Have everybody sit down and have a holy experience out of it. Have everyone be inspired by the Shabbos tish. Put something extra into it. Sing a niggin that everybody likes. Try to appeal to every member of the family. Say over a short story that they'll enjoy. Repeat the Pirkei Avos shir to them. Ha! That's a joy. And then it's like you're eating from the table of Hashem. Shenemar, It says in the Pasuk in Yechezkel HaNavi, Vaydaber Elai, and the Malach said to me, Zeh HaShulchan, this is the table, Asher Lifnei Hashem, which is set before Hashem. A person has a chance that they can be in the table of Hashem. That's any time you eat. That doesn't matter if you're having sushi as a snack. It doesn't matter whether you're going to have standing ribs. It doesn't matter whether you're at a place, even the people that are going to go to the ballpark and they make a little sudala, I know the minig is hot dogs, whatever it is. Even there, a person should always remember, it's a shulchan before Hashem. We have the power to transform the table and make it a table right in front of Hashem. That is what we do when we ourselves are involved in learning, when we ourselves are involved in making sure that there is the proper avira, the atmosphere, the environment is the right way for us to be involved in. I will never ever forget the great Goin Reb Simcha Wasserman, the great tzaddik. He was in a hotel in Washington, D.C., and he didn't have anything to eat. I was together with him. So I said to the Rabbi, I said, Rosh Yeshiva, could I get something to eat for you? He says, yeah, but I don't think there's a kosher restaurant around. In that day, there wasn't anything. I said, I have a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law, the Brands in Baltimore, and they could bring some food. And the truth is, the Brands bought sandwiches for the great Rosh Yeshiva. If I tell you, when I watched and I ate together with Rosh Yeshiva, the care that he took, the kavanah that he had, the way that he thanked Hashem, what he spoke about during that time, it was a lesson for me for 120 years. I never forget that time. It's just a sandwich. A person, just a sandwich, so what is that? If I'm eating a whole Suda, and then I got the Vorspeise, and I got all of the other things, the appetizer and so forth, then I can understand if I'm going to have the dessert table with Viennese, then it's a Suda that's proper. No, one sandwich in a plastic bag, a baggie, that's good enough to make a Suda before Hashem. And so, the great Beis HaLevi, the giant of his generation and of all generations, a very wealthy man came to him and said, Beis HaLevi, I would like you to come. I'm making a very big bar mitzvah for my son. And in fact, this man was extremely wealthy. And if the Beis HaLevi would come to his bar mitzvah, to the man's celebration, it would certainly be a great honor. He said, I also have a big carriage outside that is going to take the rabbi. Just that carriage, nobody else will go, just you. The Beis HaLevi asked him, can I ask you a question? Is the bar mitzvah bocher going to give a drasha? Is someone going to say words of Torah? The man said, Rabbi, times have changed. Machlivas Azmanim, the times have changed. There's not a drasha, we have entertainment, we're going to do other things. There's not going to be any speeches there. We don't want to bore anybody. If so, the Beis HaLevi said, without a drasha, it's a moshav leitzim, like we learned in a different Mishnah. It is a place where people who are not serious, scoffers, it's where they sit. While he was there, all of a sudden, a very poor man came in. A very poor man. You could see by the way he was dressed, by how he looked, Nebuch. He comes in and tells the Beis HaLevi, I would like to get a bracha for my son. Right now, he is becoming bar mitzvah, and we're making a suda. Immediately, the Beis HaLevi gave the man a bracha for his son. And then the man worked up the courage. This poor man said to the Beis HaLevi, it would be unbelievable for us, for our whole family, if the great tzaddik would grace us with his presence. The Beis HaLevi said, has the Bocha Bar Mitzvah prepared a Bar Mitzvah pshetel, something to say in honor of the Bar Mitzvah? Yes, he has an entire pilpul about tefillin. Beis HaLevi says, for you and for your son, I will attend. He got up, he got his Shabbos coat in order to attend the Suda of this poor man's Bar Mitzvah son. The Gevir who was there couldn't believe what happened in front of his eyes. His arrogance, his gaiva, his honor, his kavod got to him. He got very angry. He said, what are you doing? You know what kind of a bizayon it'll be for me? You're going to this man's simcha and to mine, the greatest simcha that this city has ever had in its history? You're not going to go? The Beis HaLevi explained to him very kindly, to a mesiba where there is no Torah, I don't go. The Gevir despised the Rabbi from that moment on. He wanted to take nekama. He wanted to take revenge against the Rabbi. So what did he do? He went to the Baladira. He went to the one who was the landlord of the Beis HaLevi's apartment, and he said, I want you to stop housing the Beis HaLevi. You cannot anymore allow him to live in the apartment. The man had no choice. He needed the money. He was desperate. He put the Beis HaLevi out. But that's not where this rich man stopped. He went to all of the people in the town, and he told all of the people, if you are going to house the Beis HaLevi, if you're going to take rent from him, I'm going to make sure that you fail. I'm going to make sure that you starve. I'm going to make sure that you have no more business because I control things in this town. Unfortunately, people were desperate. And when the landlord of the Beis HaLevi told him that he has to leave, the Beis HaLevi smiled. He said, it's okay. It's not your fault. What can you do? You need parnasa. You need a livelihood. And he left. There was only one person that was willing to take in the Beis HaLevi. It was one of the officers of the city, an Einu Yehudi. However, the Beis HaLevi would not go. Azachilul Hashem, a desecration of Hashem's name, that he's going to go into there, and the others did not admit him. So, at that moment, he left, and he became the rabbi, the Rav, in Slutsk. How the Beis HaLevi was willing to do anything at all, but not go into a Suda where there is not Divrei Torah. All of us should be encouraged and inspired. We all have such great kochos. I've been to so many places where they ask me to say a Devar Torah. I've been in so many places where I wouldn't even imagine that the people wanted to hear a good word. And they wanted, and then they wanted more. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goyechod ba'aretz, like the Medrash says, it's like the fish. The fish keep coming up. When you're pouring in things, water, it keeps wanting more and more and more. Why? Because it's like Eden. The more Torah they give you, the more that you want. Be'ez Hashem Yisparach, in the schus of the Torah, we should be zocha to the Gula Shalema Bimhera.